Welcome to those of you who are now regular viewers of the Sydney by the Sea YouTube channel. We're not recording this on Thursday because we just didn't. Last Thursday, Gina Payzant, who is the sister of our club secretary, Judy Axelson, spoke to us for the second time, actually met with us and spoke about her career as a movie producer, writer, teacher, artist. At the time of the release of her latest movie, which is Physics for Poets. Gina is an amazing person who has brought to the screen. We saw the movie in a limited release, in an unofficial release at the Star Cinema a few days after the meeting. Few independent film producers in this country have done what she has done. Welcome, Gina. We're pleased to speak with you from your home in Edmonton. And in my study in Sydney, I have a painting of southern Alberta, but John wants the camera angle to be what it is. Thank you very much for reaching out to us. And we are, of course, deeply grateful that your sister plays such a prominent role in our club. And as you may or may not have seen, John, you'll recall this, Judy gave the invocation at a meeting several months ago. It was so wonderful that we recorded it. And Judy is reading what is a poem written by a Rotarian years ago, in I think in the state of Kansas, about what Rotary is all about. And it is very eloquent. Gina, your father was in Rotary. You know a lot about the Rotary clubs. It was a pleasure to welcome you, and particular pleasure to have been privileged to see the pre-release version of your wonderful movie. How has the launch of the film gone in Alberta, where it was produced, right? And has cleared the censor board? John, you'd be pleased to know that the reason it was an unofficial launch of the film at the Star Cinema is that the BC Film Censorship Board hadn't quite gotten around to putting its seal of approval on Gina's film. Need we mention in provincial trade? Enough, Gina. How are you this morning? And thank you again, both for speaking with our club, meeting with us, and inviting a number of us to see the preview.
Oh, good morning, John, and thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're still waiting to get our official rating from Consumer Protection Branch of the BC government. We're hoping it comes soon. We have our Alberta rating, and of course, we're rated general. So as soon as we get our BC rating, I think we can expect more screenings of the film. But to answer your question, we did have two launches, one at the TELUS World of Science in Edmonton on April the 23rd. And I'm pleased to report that we had a full house. That was in the IMAX theater in Edmonton, and we had a full house for that, and it was great. All the cast and crew came, and of course it was an Edmonton production.
Gina, I'd like you to describe the film. I can, as a viewer. Sure. You wrote, produced, directed, yep, the whole thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. I can describe the film. I can describe it as it's a film that takes place in one night, and in this night, in 1633, Galileo is preparing to travel from his home in Florence. Actually, he lived in Arcetri, just south of Florence. He's preparing to travel to make the journey from his home to Rome. And the purpose of that visit is to appear in front of the Holy Roman Inquisitional Council. Those fun guys. Anyhow, he has been requested. Um, the Inquisitional Council requested his appearance twice already. And this third request is a little bit more forceful than the previous two. Anyhow, Galileo realizes that he really needs to go. In the night, Galileo has visitors. Various forces visit him in the night to offer comfort, to offer hope, to even offer an escape, and to offer a warning. One visitor is his daughter, Sister Maria Celeste. Um, that's Galileo's daughter, Virginia, who really was a nun. She lived right across the villa. Her convent was San Mateo. She was with the Order of Poor Clares. She was also, this is historical fact, that she was the village apothecary. So the village, the Archetri, that area, counted on her for various unguents and ointments and tinctures and various medicines, which by and large would have been what we call today essential oils. The other two visitors are young Viviani, a student of Galileo, a promising student of mathematics. He offers escape. People had been declared of heresy for less than what Galileo is being charged with. And Viviani fears that Galileo will be tortured and eventually burnt, perhaps both. So he offers an escape.
And
Another,
just to remind folks, Galileo's sin was he determined that the Earth went around the sun,
mm-hmm.
not the sun going around the Earth. So, John, you can see how destabilizing that piece of knowledge was.
Oh, destabilizing is the word. The church, the power that be, wanted people to believe that God was up there in the heavens watching down on everybody, making sure that we were well behaved. And if we weren't, well, you know where we would be shipped off to. Um, yeah, so Galileo had proof of the geocentric, that is, the Earth centered universe. And the church didn't really want the people to buy into that yet. So Torricelli, friend of Galileo's, visits Galileo in the night, and some of you might know Torricelli as the inventor of the barometer, and he offers. He says to Galileo, "Just give them what they want and come home. Science has its martyrs, but we need you. We need you to come back home." And the last visitor in the night is Johann Kepler. Johann Kepler's been dead for 3, maybe 4 years at this point, and we're not sure if he's coming back as a nightmare, a bad dream, or what. But he offers Galileo some warnings that he needs to heed about his current situation and about the future. So yes, John, you're absolutely right. The entire story hinges on the upheaval that Galileo's discovery of the truth would basically present.
Gina, just for your information, John is now the custodian of a monthly luncheon group that has been a breakfast group, which has been meeting for what, 30 years, John, in Sydney?
It's been meeting since the late early 90s, more than that, 40 years.
So this is a group of business people from all backgrounds, entrepreneurs, bankers, insurance, but people who are looking at or working on new ideas, who just come together informally. Mm-hmm. And John, and to hear speakers that deal with some of the issues of, frankly, how an idea becomes, mm-hmm. how a concept becomes an idea, becomes a reality. Mm-hmm. And now John gets about between 90 or 100 people at the Shoal Center where our Rotary Club meets, once a month for some fascinating discussions. Your film,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it may appeal to a rather narrow public if you look at it as Galileo. Now, mind you, that narrow public includes anybody that's ever looked at a star,
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's ever marveled at how the Canadian Space Agency puts somebody on the other side of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Victoria, of course, it's the center of the universe in that amazing telescope. And it was your sister Judy who got several of our club members, many of them, up to the observatory to get
Mm-hmm.
the story. John, it is a phenomenal story of astrophysical research, the presence of that instrument in Victoria. Now, again, I apologize for the fact that the province of British Columbia wouldn't give the gold seal so you could have a proper launch of that film here. But your film is linked to a very proud history of this community.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. And it's linked in another way too, that one of my short documentary films called An Astronomical Moment is currently on exhibit at the Center of the Universe facility, which is right next to the observatory. So we're also connected that way. But I'd like to go back for a moment because you touched on something that I think really gets to the heart of the film. And that is, how do ideas come about? And which ideas do we choose to pursue? And what are consequences of pursuing new ideas? And excuse me, my film really does explore that. Um, when I wrote the film, it was originally written as a play script in the late 80s. I was really interested in the Club of Rome wrote a book called The Limits. I can't remember the title of it now. I should get my my bibliography out. Um, oh, well, there was Alvin Toffler, the futurist. His books influenced me very heavily. Carl Sagan, the futurists. Limits to Growth, the Club of Rome, published this book in the early 70s. And it was people from all around the world who realized that we could not keep growing and growing and growing and growing without consequences. Okay. And these books that I looked at, a lot of them came out in the 70s, early 80s, basically were questioning technologies that were emerging at the time. And some of them put forth the question to question, well, what is the true value of a technology? How do we determine what a technology is really worth? Well, one thing is you could apply that to the rotary, is it the
Four-way test?
the
Yes.
four-way test? You could apply a technology to that and see if it passes.
Yeah.
But in my film, Physics for Poets, the question that I put forth is, who do we answer to? Who is our authority? And what is the value of a technology if it fails to serve our single greatest reason for being? That is to say, if it's not benefiting humankind, then what is the value of that technology?
So I would say, I love that. And what I would say, John, is that this movie could be re-released with a different title.
What would you call it?
Poetry for Entrepreneurs.
Oh,
Every entrepreneur, John, we see them every Sydney Breakfast Club meeting. Every entrepreneur is Galileo.
Yep,
They have discovered something that no one else saw.
that's right.
Well, I'd love to jump in. There's so many things are going through my brain because I think you actually may not have realized how absolutely appropriate Physics for Poets fits into today's challenging times it's right at the juxtaposition of science and faith. And
Yes. Yeah.
in fact, that is exactly the place that the modern authoritarianism and
Yes.
modern authoritarian uh, likes to live, because they want to destroy science,
That's right.
because facts get in the way of the authoritarian taking over society. We're now seeing that in full flux down south. Of course, it was beginning to happen in Europe and is now being overcome by common sense, by science, by facts, all of which Galileo represents in your movie. And
Yes.
faith and church, the worst parts of that, because both can exist together. You can believe in both.
Yes.
But as it is with the very worst parts of humanity, we the edges of behavior tend to take over. And so back then, which I studied for many years in university, the church did not fundamentally exist to spread faith. It existed to gain control and power,
Hmm.
using faith and religion. And
Hmm.
so I don't know if back in the 80s, when you were sort of, being influenced by these different books, etc.,
Hmm.
did you actually realize how absolutely appropriate the messages of this film end
Hmm.
up in today's political environment, which
Hmm.
is what John and I talk about so much, about so many of our different podcasts. And so that's where I think this lives, as much as it also supports the entrepreneur and the development of new ideas, and where do those fit into our world. For me, when I of course I haven't watched it, I can't wait to watch it. It was a real message that we had better really pay attention to what is happening, and how our political leaders are trying to remove facts and objective thinking from our policy making.
Yes.
Congratulations. I
Thank
just
you.
love it, the timing of this film.
Well, I got to tell you, I wrote the film in the late 80s. I was just finishing up a Bachelor of Education degree so that I could teach in rural Alberta. And I did. I did go off and I taught for good 15 years in rural Alberta. And I didn't like what I saw. I grew up in Alberta, and exactly what you're talking about, the rise of authoritarianism, we're seeing that right now in Alberta. Okay? Let's call a spade a spade.
Mhm.
I saw that, the start of it, well, it goes back many, many years because southern Alberta has its own history regarding various concepts that tie into what we're talking about.
Mhm.
But certainly where I was living, you know what did it for me? Okay, I told you that my dad was a Rotarian. He was also a steward with the United Church of Canada. He was also a teacher, went on to become a principal. He was a physics teacher, by the way.
Mm.
And long after my father had passed away, I met a woman in Collinton, which is where I lived for a time, south of Athabasca, who remembered having my father, George Cravets, as a teacher in Innisfree, very small town east of Vegreville here in Alberta. And she started to laugh. And I said, "What's so funny?" And she said, "Your father. We called him Godless George." And I was appalled. I said, "Why would you do that?" "Oh, because he didn't go to our church. He went to a different church."
Mm. Mhm.
And this was a bit of an eye opener for me. The very people that I did have respect for in rural Alberta, because I grew up, my uncle was two uncles were farmers. I grew up to respect people working the land, especially. And the more I lived in rural Alberta, the more I saw things moving in a direction that I found frankly frightening.
And
And
that kind of opinion existed at the time of Galileo,
mhm,
And in fact, um, thousands of years of fighting have ensued and had already happened because of people choosing their own God
Yeah,
over others.
yeah.
And so without I'm not aware of the exact details of what happens after the Inquisition, but and I don't know if you're willing to tell us the what actually happened on the third time.
Yeah, well, he was
Are
put on
you?
trial.
Okay.
He was put on trial, and we're not sure if he was threatened with
Yeah.
burning at the stake.
Yes.
We think he was threatened with torture, but there's different kinds of torture, right? You know, they could discredit you. That was a
Yeah,
big.
sure.
You know, there was many things that they could do to Galileo. But they did bring him to his knees. They did force him. He was 69 years old. He was not in particularly good health. His eyesight was fading him. Anyhow, in Rome, they brought him to his knees and they forced him to recount. They
That's
even,
such a poignant statement you said
yeah,
that that there were so many ways in which they could harm him.
yes,
And I have been listening to how folks are trying in the US to react to Trump.
yes,
And one of the great tools he has is this ability for his administration to exact pain and consequence in so many ways to
yeah,
anyone that disagrees with him.
yeah.
It is the exact analogy to what you
Mhm.
just said to the
It is.
and the great fear, and of course then of course the great responsibility we have is
Yeah.
to ensure that that doesn't float its way up to Canada.
Well, it
You
has.
know?
It has in Alberta. Okay. Now,
Wow.
I don't want to say that everybody in rural Alberta has succumbed to Christo-fascist forces because that's not true. There are many people in rural Alberta who are thinking, they're critical thinking, they're using their head, they're doing their best. But I will tell you, a lot of them are scared to come forward. I
Wow.
will tell you that. Um,
Gina, I'm going to take you back to the film for a second.
okay.
John, you've got to see this film.
Oh, I will when it's
There's a reason why we are basically discussing philosophical subjects at the moment, and it is the way Gina chose as the producer and director of the movie to portray the story.
Oh, yes.
It's very interesting, and John's a good sportsman, so and I know this from talking to Gina. It is a method that was used in the era when the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup.
John, you and I had hair then.
But I think Gina, the genius of your production is that the timelessness of the messages. People walk away and they can't stop thinking about the movie. And by the way, they're not saying, wow, what beautiful scenery. I never knew Tuscany had, pasta restaurants and stuff. No, the way you framed the movie, it focuses on the ideas that you're trying to get people to think about. It's brilliant.
Well, I can talk about the set. There is no set. There
Mm.
is absolutely no set. And I was influenced very heavily by the early CBC productions. These were black and white, going back to the late 50s, early 60s.
When the Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup, John, like I said.
Yep. And these productions were great plays like Hamlet, Oedipus Rex, plays like that. And they were produced blank walls, but very carefully curated set pieces and props and costumes that were more about line and texture and getting the look. When I was a kid, like 6 years old, my parents had a special chair where I could watch TV, and I was totally immersed in those. They were like 2.5 hours long, too. They were full length script. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever was to be able to watch these plays. So when it came time to produce Physics for Poets, I thought, that's what I need to do. I need to go back to those production values. I mean, just because they didn't have any money, and they did at that time, doesn't mean there were no production values. So FAVA, which is Film and Video Arts Alberta Society, has a studio called Studio B. And in the studio is a giant white cyclorama. So it's just this huge white expanse. And if you're standing on it, it looks like you're floating in space. And I went, perfect. So I got 2 carpets. I very carefully picked out the furniture, the set pieces, and it gives the illusion that we're floating in time. But as a director, I said to the actors, you cannot step off of the carpet because that puts you in the void. And they were really confused. They were like, what is this? What are we doing? And they said, well, where's the set? And I said, well, this is it. They said, well, and I said, but it's everything, but it's nothing. And they sort of looked at me. I said, well, let's just carry on. We'll do some rehearsals. And just remember, it's everything, but it's nothing. Quantum mechanics. It's a big paradox. It's physics. They kind of liked that idea. And off we went. And by the end of the day, they were like, wow, this is great. Because they viewed it as a field of potential, the set. And they referred to it as the abyss, right? Not the set. We had an abyss. And I had a very good technical director, Larry Kelly. I was really lucky to have him. And he was masterful with the lighting because, as I said earlier, it takes place in the night. And all these people and forces visit Galileo in the night. So we basically got a feature film entirely in the night, except for the very last scene, which is scene 10. And that scene is what happens. Galileo comes home. He comes home from his ordeal in Rome. And he's tended to by his daughter, Virginia, Sister Maria Celeste. So a lot of the film, as you can imagine, is about relationships, especially the father-daughter relationship. Dava Sobel wrote a book called Galileo's Daughter. I highly recommend it to anyone. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book about a father-daughter relationship. And that was very inspirational.
Gina, I'd like to pull us away from the messaging and the content and intent of your movie and shift ourselves a little bit to the medium. Okay. And of course, the great phrase penned in the early 60s, by Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message.
That's right.
You are and have been creating videos now for some time. And of course, if people were to ask me, what do I do? And you might do that at some point. At any given time or place, I might have 20 different answers. But fundamentally, the sort of overarching umbrella is communications consultant. I love and study the art of communications and how we communicate. And that has evolved over time from writing to tech, to using the phone, to today, where the most impactful medium for communications is video, which is what you do. And it is the prominent form of effective communications on the internet, which is all around us. And whether we like it or not, it's the way majority of our communities talk to each other. So you have now not only brought forward content from hundreds of thousands of years ago to today's reality, but you're using it in a way that reflects today's communication reality.
Yeah.
And so I'd like you to talk about the impact of using video today, and secondly, the most effective way of talking on a set on video, which is by storytelling, which,
Right.
which is
Yes.
essentially what you just described. There doesn't have to be a set because we
No.
are captured by the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Um, I agree. However, just because you have no set doesn't mean you have to think of what is the appropriate background that's going to hold and support the story, but
Mm,
also engage the viewer,
mm.
right? So there is an aesthetic to it. I do not recommend just going out and shooting on a blank, you know,
Canvas.
cyclorama
Yeah.
randomly. It's got to be a purpose to it. And I'll go back to saying to my actors, you cannot step off of those carpets because if you do, you're in the abyss. But Kepler, who is the stuff of the night, right, can go anywhere he wants.
Mm.
So, in that very simple device, that we can reinforce the story. So, you're never sure, is Galileo dreaming this? Is Kepler a ghost? Why can Kepler walk wherever he wants, but nobody else can? Oh, he's not of this world, right? So, but you're absolutely right about storytelling. Every editor that I've worked with, every good editor that I've worked with, they're always saying, what's the story? Or whose story is it?
Mm.
Right? So there's all these elements of storytelling to consider. And if you've got a good story, that's your foundation.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and you know that has never changed over these
No.
hundreds and hundreds of years,
No.
is that human beings listen better through storytelling than any other medium.
Sure.
Well
Look at
done.
the Old Testament.
Mm.
It's a case in point right there. But yeah, I sometimes I work with really young filmmakers, and they might invite me to their pre-production meetings, and very often there's so much talk about the technology that they're going to use, like what camera they can borrow or who's got this equipment, you know, and I'll sit and listen to it. And I'll say, well, where's the story? And they look at me, well, we haven't gotten there yet. And well,
Oh no.
where's the script? Well, we don't have one.
I'm engaged in digital communications,
Mhm.
obviously, and people pay me to put together their social media platforms, their political digital platforms, etc. And they get excited about, well, what tools should we use? Where should we be? And
Yeah,
how do we do this? And I go,
yeah,
excuse me, that's irrelevant.
it
That,
is.
that that's the easiest part. I can do all
Yeah,
of that stuff in half an hour.
yeah,
Can you
yeah,
tell me what you're trying to say?
exactly.
And how you want to say and who you want to say it to?
Yeah, yeah,
What? Okay, whoa. Sorry, I can't help you. Uh,
yeah,
you got to get that figured out. You've got to get your story figured out. Gina,
yeah.
well done. I
Thank you.
cannot wait for BC to find. Why are they not approving this film?
Oh,
Or
who
hold on.
knows it? You know what? It could be our fault too at the studio. That it's two parts. The first part is you need to get your license as a distributor of film. Okay, so we got that. We have our distributor number, our license number.
Yeah.
Then you apply for your rating. So I don't know, maybe we were late in getting something, the paperwork in. I'm
I
not
see.
sure, but I do know that it's in now. I know for sure. Um,
John, we're
so
drifting into grumpy taxpayer territory, my
Well,
yeah,
I've just this is
uh,
this is one more example of something like Galileo's world, because clearly there isn't a dotted line between Alberta and British Columbia, and people on both sides of the line are Canadian citizens,
friend.
right,
cognitive adults,
yeah,
and what your journey for certification has reinforces is that the world is round, but our governance isn't.
Well,
That's a great
yeah.
way to end our interview.
Gina,
Gina,
congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this movie.
You know, I
It's
have to say just one more thing, that I'm so pleased with the time that we had together today, because you really, both of you, really got to the heart and the core of the film and why I wrote it and what it's really about.
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Mhm.
The world needs more poetry. You bring poetry every day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Gina. And we will be not only promoting this interview, but promoting the film because
Thank you.
it needs to be watched by every citizen that can watch it.